I would like to thank you for the reception and support shown us both during the meeting of the International Advisory Council and today's opportunity to have a meeting. Thank you. I think that today we are going to broaden our contacts. The first question I would like to ask you is about the International Advisory Council, as our readers will be interested to specify what it is, what are its main tasks, and how was it established. Throughout the world, the military, including servicemen of reserve and retirees, play a special role in politics, public life and economics. Various public organizations associated with reservists make use of cutting-edge experience, share information, and jointly study various problems. We have made a decision to unite those organizations and set up the International Advisory Council of the Organizations of Reserve Officers. It should be reiterated that the Council is an attempt to unite organizations of reserve officers of NATO and those of the former Warsaw Treaty. On the one hand, both military of NATO and servicemen of the former Soviet Union, the CIS countries, and the former Warsaw Treaty face same challenges. We are officers of reserve and therefore, like no one else, know what the military conflict is, and our first and foremost mission is to prevent major hostilities and a new world war. The third problem facing our team is to convey to the generations to come mutual understanding and respect for cultural identities of various states. Peace-loving should be passed over to children and grandchildren of different countries. They should back friendly relations. Nowadays, the Council consists of representatives from 16 states as permanent members, with 4 members being observers. We hope that the membership will continue to enlarge. Such issues as conveying to the future generations experience gained, friendly atmosphere and good relations among servicemen are no longer paid attention to in Europe, Western Europe. What goals do we have in this regard? At the first meeting of our Council, we invited a number of heads of children's and youth organizations and joint organizations such as the US-Russian and Russian-Chinese ones. Our first priority is to affect consciousness of Russia's future generations, and we would like the same to be done in other states. First, the youth ought to know what war is, to know that it brings losses of life and destroys culture. And secondly, they must learn to compete rather than to confront one another. Competitiveness should be based on respect for cultural heritage of other states, their history and traditions. It is especially relevant for Russia, as it is populated with over 100 ethnic groups and nationalities.
Для России это особенно актуально, потому что у нас проживает больше 100 народностей и национальностей.
I have to ask another question. In the light of the state of affairs in Western Europe, well, at least in Spain, it is very difficult to get any support for reserve officers' organizations on behalf of the Ministry of Defense. What is the situation in Russia in this context? What kind of support is rendered to the Megapeer Association from the Ministry of Defense, or are there any impediments to its activities? Our organization of Megapeer was born after the collapse of the Soviet Union, followed by a natural collapse of the armed forces in the early 1990s. Back then, many officers of the Soviet armed forces were left out in the cold, including me. I was a senior officer of the General Staff of the Land Forces of the Ministry of Defense. In 1937, I retired from the armed forces, having served for 20 years, and started from scratch, again from scratch in 1937. With reserve officers like me, at first we established a commercial company, then several commercial firms, and afterwards united them into an association. During the first 5 years, we were just making money and building economics foundation. When we earned good money, we built the business center on our own. In Moscow and throughout Russia, we have several similar centers that service over 10 million people per year. After 5 or 6 years, upon building our economic basis, within the association we set up different social foundations and organizations that began helping veterans, military personnel and families of officers falling in flashpoints. Not a penny is borrowed from the Defense Ministry and other government bodies. Over the recent 15 years, we paid nearly $50 million worth of taxes, with $20 million granted for charity. For instance, an artillery polygon in the vicinity of St. Petersburg brings together the best commanders of artillery batteries for competitions. The best one is given a car as a prize, and annually we have 250 scholarship holders. All of them are children of perished officers. Monthly we pay them scholarships and help find a job. These are children of soldiers fallen in hot spots, in the Caucasus and in the East. Therefore, given our economic independence, we try to affect society, and we have our representatives within the State Duma, the Federation Council and local authorities. I am chairman of the Russian Federation Public Chamber Commission on National Security. I can't help asking about your short-term and long-term plans for the future. Speaking of the meeting in Bratislava, what are further plans after it?
С 22 по 26 мая
From the 22nd to the 26th of May, the second meeting of the Council will be held in Vienna and Bratislava. In a short term, we intend to set up a new foundation for the Council. An organizational one has already been established, and now we want to create its ideological basis. Ideological foundation implies an exchange of opinions and prospects of our Council's activities. By no means we have any political purposes or intentions of meddling in activities of other states. We started publishing our journal, launched a website, and began exchanging information among members of the Council. Over the recent half a year, our Council's Executive Secretary, Anatoly Kumahov, visited the US, Vienna, Finland, Austria and Ukraine. I was in the Arab Emirates and Germany, where we hold bilateral and multilateral meetings to extend our Council's activities. On the 16th of February, our Council is holding a reception for military attachés accredited here in Moscow. They will be briefed on our first steps and plans. In perspective, we would like to enlarge the organization and to make it possible to unite similar organizations for bilateral and multilateral contacts. We also would like the Council to have ties not only in Europe, but also in Africa, South America and Asia.
Имели возможность контактов двухсторонних, многосторонних, и чтобы Международный консультативный совет имел свои, так сказать, связи не только в Европе, в Азии, но и в Африке, в Южной Америке, в Азии.
En lo que yo conozco, en lo que conocemos en España,
it should be mentioned that NATO-level organizations of reserve officers and veterans to a certain extent differ from those of Megapeer. Megapeer is much more powerful and much more perfect. Given its extension, is there a risk for any form of expansion?
En cuanto a la expansión y representatividad que pueda llegar a tener Megapeer.
We don't have such a purpose. Our relations are based on principles of mutual respect and support, first and foremost through an exchange of information and experience. For instance, at the invitation of the U.S. Army Association, I visited Washington. The body's work is based on economic independence from the government, which is very important. There are similar agencies in Germany, the US, and Norway that are dependent from governmental financing. We are working with the Ministry of Defense, and I am Deputy Chairman of the Defense Ministry Public Council. This is a very serious civil agency holding control over the Ministry of Defense. I often meet with the Minister of Defense, his deputies, and tomorrow I'll take part in Russian Federation President Dmitry Medvedev's consultation. We participate in the public and political life of the country. Within acceptable legal bounds, our economic independence provides us for an opportunity to criticize the state and set right presumptions officials. A year ago, at a meeting with the President, I told him that pensions of our servicemen had dropped compared to those of civilians. The President promised to solve the issue, and today their amount increased 50%. In other words, we have experience of cooperation with the state and public organizations, including joint work at the international level. But we emphatically oppose interference in somebody's affairs or dominance over such agencies. This is no deal. We must respect one another. Over a year, Anatoly Kumachov and I got familiar with many heads of organizations similar to ours, and we learned about their activities headed by reputable people. The American Association is aged 50, and the Norwegian organization is older than a centenary. While firstly, our main principle is friendship, and secondly, foreign organizations have a lot to learn from.
Принцип наш — это дружбы, а второй нам есть чему поучиться и очень многому у зарубежных организаций.
Well, what would you like to tell to representatives of organizations of reserve officers and reservists of Spain to encourage them to participate in such an organization as Megapeer?
Если посмотреть на нашу историю,
if you take a look at our history, the history of Spain, and the history of Russia and the Soviet Union, you realize that we have a lot in common. We still honor historical facts of the heroes who fought in Spain, rendering help to the Spanish people in the 1930s. We honor traditions of the Spanish people very much, including those of the Spanish army. Of course, both Spain, along with its armed forces, and Russia, with its armed forces and Russian veterans, will keep on living independently from one another. However, cooperation, sharing friendship and history with future generations of our nations will prove being beneficial both for Russia and Spain. And I wish veterans, whose financial conditions of living leave much to be desired compared to tycoons and millionaires, met more frequently, visited one another, were friends, and communicated. I think it will do them good. The issue of financing is common for veterans of the US, the UK, Norway, and Russia. As a first step, we invite a delegation from your country to Moscow. The best time for it is the end of April. Moscow will be in full splendor this season. It takes you nothing but to arrive, and we'll accommodate you and have everything arranged. Thank you.
Thank you very much.